The only people who don't want to disclose the truth are people with something to hide.
Ted Cruz claims he's the only person in a position to challenge Donald Trump for the Republican presidential nomination. At this very moment, though, a judge in New York is hearing arguments on whether Cruz is even eligible to run for president. Cruz, as you probably know by now, was born in Canada. His mother was born in the United States. Two men in New York filed a lawsuit claiming he doesn't meet the constitutional requirements for the presidency. They point to, and there is the Constitution, this is actually Article 2, no person except a natural-born citizen is eligible to be president, Article 2. Now, most legal experts tell us they believe Cruz is a natural-born citizen, but courts have never actually settled that very issue. And moments ago, that's precisely what the plaintiffs asked the judge to do.
Every voter in New York State, every Republican voter should be able to go to the polls knowing that they're voting for a candidate who is actually eligible for the presidency of the United States and not one whose competency to be a president is called into disrepute when he is the president, if he is the president.
Attorneys for Cruz noted similar lawsuits have been tossed out in some other states, arguing this should be an easy case for the judge.
The federal law at the time, in 1970, at the time that Senator Cruz was born, was crystal clear. He was born, and that the language is black letter and plain. He was born an American citizen.
For his part, the judge questioning whether he, the judge, even has the authority to rule on federal law regarding the eligibility of presidential candidates, because this is a state court judge. Doug Burns joins us now on the Fox News deck. He is a former federal prosecutor. Can a state court judge rule on a federal law?
I think it's a very significant question, and when I looked at that, I said, wait a minute, isn't this purely a question of federal law, number one? And number two, it's interesting because even if this were in a federal court could turn around and say, well, wait a minute, two things. Number one, this isn't even justiciable because it's a political question, essentially, which should be resolved in Congress. Mm-hmm. And number two, it's not ripe, as silly as that sounds, because the point is you can't be president. I'm not trying to be cute. It doesn't say you can't run for president. A court say, wait a minute, if he wins and he's president-elect, bring me the case.
Because if you look at the Constitution, it's actually Congress that makes the decision on president, specifically the Senate, not judges, although the Supreme Court in the 2000 case might differ with you on that. All right, so we showed the Constitution. You've got to be a natural-born citizen to be president. Article 1, and here's the Constitution. Yeah. Article 1 says Congress will define what that means, and they did it in 1790. Take a look at it on the screen. Right. Quote, the children of citizens of the United States that may be born beyond sea or out of the limits of the United States shall be considered as natural-born citizens. Now, later, Congress added a residency requirement for the parent. Right. But Ted Cruz's mother easily satisfies that. So isn't it true that there's really no issue here? He's eligible.
The weight of legal and historical authority is squarely on the side of Ted Cruz being eligible under these definitional semantic formulations. The other side argues, though, real quick, that to be a congressman or a senator, a representative or a senator, you have to be a citizen. That means either you're a citizen immediately or you become naturalized, okay? So where it says natural-born citizen, the argument is that must mean something else. It must mean something more. That's the argument. But again, the legal academy, legal scholars, law professors, the majority of them all say this is essentially a non-issue, Greg.
All right, the two plaintiffs in the New York case are rather unbelievably arguing that Cruz is not a citizen under common law, which, as you know, is English law derived from custom and judicial precedent. Common law is utterly irrelevant and meaningless when there is a specific statute passed by Congress and signed by the president.
No, I totally agree with that. But what happens now is you get a little bit into the practical academia calculus. One woman wrote, and I think you may have written an article about this, in the Washington Post, she's a law professor, saying he's ineligible. And then Lawrence Tribe, the very famous constitutional scholar from Harvard Law School, turns around and says, it's debatable. No, I read the article by former Solicitor General Paul Clement and another scholar with him, and they laid it out very, very clearly. You know, I'm not coming at this politically. This has nothing to do with what I think of
it's
Anderson,
very simple.
legally,
Congress
there's
passed
no
a
real
law that is
question.
one sentence long.
It's crystal clear, Greg.
It's abundantly clear.
Yeah, it's crystal clear. And I think that, Donald Trump's only point that's valid, and people have recognized this, he said, look, the Supreme Court of the United States has not squarely ruled on this. But again, any legal scholar is going to say that he is going to prevail on this.
Even Harvard law professor Tribe, you pointed out.
Right.
If you actually read the column that Tribe wrote, which I did several times,
yes,
he agrees that Cruz is a citizen eligible to be president. He just makes this sort of roundabout argument that if you believe Cruz's judicial philosophy, you might find
He turns around and says if he's really an originalist, it's ironic because it goes against them.
Right. Donald Trump has misinterpreted what Tribe has said.
No, I think you're right, Greg. Yeah.
Okay. Doug, good to see you. Doug Burns.
Thanks, Greg.
The only people who don't want to disclose the truth are people with something to hide.